This lesson, I'm going to speak on the facial bones, the hands, and the toes. So I'm going to go over the skeletal facial bones first, and I have a diagram. It's the same one that we got in class because I can't really explain it without I don't have an actual skull with me or the fake ones to explain it. So I'm just going to go over each bone and explain how I remembered them or what a connotation to remember them is. So the first bone I'm going to go over are the parietal bones and the bones on the sides. And as I start to say these bones, I'm starting to form this whole structure into my head. Some of the parts I cannot form into my head, such as the oscicles and the bomor and the lacrimal. I can't see them to put them in, visualize them, if that makes sense. So the parietal bones are the two bones on the sides, and they go all the way up to the middle of your head. So if that is the only bone that's the only bone that's going all the way up from the sides. So the only place for the occipital bone, which is going to be the one highlighted in red, it's going to be in the back since it cannot fit in the middle. And that's how I remember that, because the parietal bones are taking up the spaces in the middle and on the side, so it only can fit in the back. The next bone I'm going to talk about is the temporal bones. And the temporal bones are off to the side. And the way that I remember that is I know that there are temporal posts, and the temporal posts are on your temples, which is on the sides of your head. So I made a connective line with that as well, saying that temporal posts, temporal bones is going to be on the sides of the head. The third bone I'm going to go over is the frontal bone, located right here, and it's going to be a flat bone. And the way that I remember a frontal bone is that the frontal bone literally has a forehead right here. So the two F's, forehead, frontal, your forehead in the front of your head, and then there's just little eyeballs, and it's like trying to create a face. So frontal, forehead, face, 3 F's. So the next bone I'm going to go over is the zygomatic bone, and it's located right here, and it's going to be your cheekbones. I don't really have any type of special order to remember that. It's just whenever I view it, I could see it trying to form as a cheekbone, on a skull. As I'm speaking about these bones, I could see it going into a face, if that makes sense. The next one I'm going to be talking about is the vomer, and it's right here, and it has a little long tube. And I don't have another connotation for a vomer. I just know that the vomer is the vomer. It's a really hard way to explain a vomer and give a connotation to it. So I had to study that symbol or that type of structure and read the book a couple of times and watch a couple of videos to understand that this is the vomer. I didn't have any type of special technique to remember it. The next bone is going to be the palatine bone, and the palatine bone is right here. And the special thing about the palatine bone is that it kind of sounds like Palestine, so that's how I remember the palatine bone is the Palestine. It's like a country, so that's how I remember the palatine bone. The next bone under that is going to be the inferior nasal chondria, and the inferior nasal chondria is above the mandible and the maxilla. So it already has its name in there, inferior, so it's going to be above. So that's kind of how I remember it. When I look at the structure, I know it's above the maxilla and the mandible, so that's how I remember inferior. And then it's right next to the nose, so inferior nasal chondria, that's how I remember. Now we're going to go over to the maxilla, and it's right here. And the maxilla is your upper jaw, and the mandible is right under, and it's going to be your lower jaw. But it's just one, if that makes sense. It's just one. All full one. And the way I remember that is M&M, the candies, because they both have M and M in their names. to start off with. And that's how I remember the maxilla and the mandible. And then the nasal is going to be right in the middle, highlighted in orange. And the way I remember the nasal bone is because I know that the nose is above the lips. When I look at the nose, I could tell that I can't view it on my screen. Like, I can't visualize it because it doesn't really look like a nose. But I know that the nose is above the maxilla and the mandible. Well, the jaw. I know it's above the jaw. So that's another thing that makes me remember. And then the next bone I'm going to go over is the ethmoid bone, highlighted in purple. And the ethmoid bone resembles a flying squirrel to me, so that's how I remember the ethmoid bone. And I forgot about the sphenoid bone. Okay, so the ethmoid bone is, this part is going to be the back of the flying squirrel, and then the pointy part at the end is going to be the tail. So that's how I remember this is the ethmoid bone, because it looks like a flying squirrel. The next one I'm going to go over is the sphenoid bone. I was supposed to go over that. And the sphenoid bone literally looks like a bat. That's how I remember that this is a sphenoid, because it looks like a bat, the bone. I also forgot to go over the lacrimal bone. The lacrimal bone is going to be right here. I don't know. It's right there. And the lacrimal bone, I don't have any type of tips or tricks. I just know that this is going to be your tear ducts. It's going to be inside of your eyeballs. And then the last and not least is going to be the ossicles bone. And it's the only 3. It comes in 3 pairs. And that's how I can remember it, is that it comes in 3 pairs. And they're 3 little bones that come together. And it's going to be in the air. And there is a hyoid bone, but you can't really see the hyoid bone. It's going to be like a plate right here, and it does not pair or like connect to other bones. And it kind of resembles a bottom of a retainer. And I feel like it makes sense if I show my retainer. This is my bottom retainer, and it kind of goes up into your neck. So that's kind of the hyoid bone. That's how I remember the hyoid bone. And the sphenoid bone is a bone that does not pair with other bones. So that's one thing I can remember about the sphenoid bone, is also that it doesn't pair with other bones. The next structure I'm going to be going over is the toe. This is another one that I have to like show each one to actually tell you. So the first bone I'm going to go over is going to be the calcaneus, which is the biggest bone. And I already knew that, so it was just like, I already know the calcaneus is the extra bone. But the way that I remember the cuboid is that CC. So either you know a girl named CC, or you know about cubic centimeters, like what's in 30 cc's, what's in 20 cc's, like medicine. So that's how I remember cuboid and calcaneus. Cuboid and calcaneus, they're both, cuboid's at the top, calcaneus is at the bottom. I remember cc's in medicine, so that's how I remember what is it called, that's how I remember calcaneus and then cuboid. The next 2 bones I'm going to go over is the tibialis and the navicular. And the tibia, not the tibia is in the leg, but the tibialis is going to be right across from the calcaneus. And the navicular is right below it. And the way that I remember that is Tennessee and Nashville. So TN, Nashville, Tennessee, or Tennessee, Nashville. So that's how I remember the talus and then the navicular. The next one I'm going to be going over is the lateral cuneiform. And the lateral cuneiform is located right here. And it's a little bit off to the side more than all the other bones that are placed in the middle or on the ends in the medial direction. So the lateral cuneiform, I know that lateral means off to the side. It means over off to the side. So lateral cuneiform, that's where I got that from. The next bone I'm going to be going over are the intermediate cuneiforms, and I know that intro means enter within, so I kind of made enter, and it's inside of the like columns of bones, so that's how I made that connection. And then the next bone I'm going to go over is the medial cuneiform, located at the end where it lines up with the big toe, which is in the middle of the midline. It's the only toe, the big toe is the only toe that is located in the midline. So that's how I remember that. Medial cuneiform, it literally has it in the name. Medial is in the middle, so that's how I remember that. And I know that the big toe is the only one that lines up with the the medial of the body, like the middle. And I know that there are 7 bones, and then there are there's 7 bones in the toe of the ankle, and then there's no ankle bones, but there's 7 bones. That's the difference between the toe and the hands, or that there's 7 in the toe, 8 in the hands, like that. So, and then we're going to go over the 5th metatarsal, and the 5th metatarsal is going to be the 5th toe. So you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it makes sense like that if you just count them. And yeah, that's how you remember that.